James Onyoin is the founding partner, J.H. Robert and Associates, and his topic that he will be presenting on is unpacking the taxes, tariffs in the intercontinental free trade area.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator, and thanks for that introduction. It's just a continuation from where we stopped yesterday. So it's easier for me. Much of the ground has already been covered. So I'm from HLB Jim Roberts. I'm one of the partners, a senior partner, and we are auditors, accountants, tax advisors, and general business advisors. I'm happy to be here to discuss with you the topic today, unpacking the taxes, tariffs in the intercontinental free trade area. So the way we are going to do it, I want us first of all to see what's happening in the intercontinental free trade area, what are the initiatives which are coming up, and then I'll also try to bring it home to East Africa, because we have the East African community, to give a local example and see how much has been done so far and how is this likely to link up with what's being done in the intercontinental free trade area. So you're welcome. This is a topic I'm very excited about because it is a chance for Africa to really leap forward. According to a World Bank report in 2020, they stated that the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement will create the largest free trade area in the world, measured by a number of participating countries. The pact connects 1.3 billion people across 55 countries with a combined gross domestic product of estimated at US dollars 3.2 trillion. So it's really big. It's a great idea. It's a big idea. It's exciting to think about it and be part of this. Of course, currently, Africa accounts for just 2% of the global trade. So we need to do a lot to improve our trade. And only 17% of the exports are done within the continent, intracontinental. When you compare this to what's happening in Asia, for example, 59% of their exports are to fellow countries within Asia. And in Europe, 68% of the exports are for countries within Europe. So you can see we have a long journey to make, 17% compared with the nearly 70% in Europe. In brief, 54 of the 55 countries have signed the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is very good, very encouraging. The exception is only Eritrea, which had not signed. And the African Continental Free Trade Area was launched in January this year, and the trading started. It's estimated that let me first say that in January this year, 35 countries had already ratified the treaty, which is very encouraging. You can see those in green had already ratified, and those in gray are part of those who signed, and only one country had not signed. So that's quite encouraging in terms of commitments by African Union countries to join the free trade area. This particular agreement aims to reduce costs and enable Africa to integrate further into global supply chains. It will eliminate 90% of the tariffs. You can imagine, that's big, 90% of the tariffs, focus on outstanding non-tariff barriers, and create a single market. When it happens, like the moderator said, with a free movement of goods and services. So that's really a very, very well thought out agreement. It's going to cut red tape and also simplify customs procedures, which will bring significant gains to the African people. Beyond the trade, the pact also addresses the movement of persons and labor, competition, investment, and issues around intellectual property. So what is the secretariat of the African of the African Continental Free Trade Area doing? They are putting mechanisms in place to facilitate intra-Africa trade. That is simplifying customs procedures and so forth. They are working with the Afrexim Bank to put in place a Pan-African payments and settlement platform. They're working with commercial banks in Africa to raise about $1 billion for trade finance to facilitate, especially SMEs, especially women, to facilitate that trade, and also the youth. And also introducing digital-enabled platforms. We heard a lot about digital platforms yesterday, and it's these digital platforms which will enable Africans to trade amongst themselves. So why is this a big global game changer? Why is it so important for us to go into this? It is an expectation which we know will happen, that the African Continental Free Trade Area will significantly reduce poverty. In fact, according to a World Bank report, it was estimated that about 100 million people will be lifted out of poverty. 70 million of those are those who are currently in moderate poverty, and 30 million of those who are in extreme poverty. That's within the next 15 years, by 2035. It is also estimated that positive economic outcomes will be many and varied, especially when you trade with each other. You are able to improve your incomes, and your GNPs will increase. Women stand to gain. They participate a lot, of course, in SMEs, which provide 90% of the jobs in Africa. If you take, for example, you see, once you don't have harmonized tax systems, for example, tariffs and so on, there can be smuggling between states. And that smuggling between countries, for example, most of the people involved are women and the youth. And if this can be sorted out, then formal trade will come in, and this should improve the livelihoods of those people. It will also promote good governance, and this, of course, will bring integrity into the trade. And then it will also help us to really tackle the negative impacts of the COVID-19. And then, of course, this is really a very good example. While other countries are trying to become individualistic, Africa is trying to come together, which is a very good and positive development. We also need to acknowledge that there will be challenges. And one of these is African countries, of course, there's a lot of dependence on commodity production and exports, which means if I'm producing coffee beans and the other person is also producing coffee beans, it may be difficult to trade within each other. So solutions will lie around increasing the value chains, the value addition into products. Lack of diversification can also be a challenge. And then also tariffs and non-tariff barriers. We shall look at some specific examples, especially in East Africa, so that we understand what we're talking about. And of course, there's a big problem of infrastructure, transport connections within these countries. I'm happy, of course, Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo have started building some roads in Congo. Maybe that will open some roads to take goods to and from Congo, the Democratic Republic. And of course, other issues, especially around logistics. So these challenges revolve around this. Implementation can be a challenge. We have to be cognizant of this fact. You remember what President Paul Kagame said in 2017 to the African heads of state. He said, there's a crisis of implementation in Africa. So we need to deal with that if we are to realize the real fruits of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Infrastructure, as I've already mentioned. And then there's also an issue to do with the heterogeneous economies. We tend, like I already mentioned, if we're all producing coffee, then there can be a challenge. And also there's an issue of some economies are big, others are small. So there's always that worry that if we go into this, maybe we'll lose because we'll then become net importers from the other country. And of course, issues around equity, there will be need to move slowly and see how these tariffs can be lifted, but not affect the very small scale farmers who may be disadvantaged. And of course, the issue of non-tariff barriers and disparity of incomes, I think I've mentioned that already amongst states. I want to just mention specifically the challenges to the SMEs in the implementation of this pact. One of them is capacity. Of course, the big companies have a lot of capacity, and there's less capacity among the SMEs, and the big ones can take advantage of that and actually make sure the small ones may not benefit a lot. Access to finance is another one. I'm happy that EcoBank is here. Maybe they will be trying to sort out that. Foreign competition, the foreigners may try to dump here goods, substandard goods even, and cause problems within our area. And then of access to power is also an issue. Infrastructure, when you talk of roads, railways, I talked about that, and also loss of intellectual property, because the big multinationals can take advantage and take a lot of intellectual property. Now, what's the East African experience? Of course, East African community was formed in 1967 between Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. But unfortunately, 10 years later, it collapsed, but was reestablished in 1999. And then we admitted 3 more members, Rwanda and Burundi in 2007, South Sudan in 2016, and DRC joining soon. So what has been the experience here? Let's talk about tax harmonization within the East African region. I just want to quote from, I was fortunate enough to attend the dialogue on the post-budget dialogue, where a report was discussed assessing the progress made on tax harmonization. And these were the findings, which were quite interesting. And this study was done by CIATINI, the Southern and Eastern African Trade Information and Negotiations Institute, in partnership with other colleagues within the region. One is that there's demonstrated political will to widen and deepen economic cooperation within the East African countries. And this is commendable, because then this means that actually this kind of cooperation can be extended to the continent as well. And domestic tax harmonization is provided for in the East African community. And why do you harmonize? You harmonize because you want to avoid risks, potential risks associated with engaging in tax competition, trying to offer lower and lower rates, especially as tax incentives. If you look at the direct taxes, they are generally harmonized within the East African region, apart from one small item of stamp duty in Rwanda that had not been harmonized. Value-added tax generally harmonized, except for Kenya, which has, the rest are now on 18% rate of tax for VAT, while Kenya has 16%. Excise duty, generally, work is going on, but a lot to be done. Tax incentives, Kenya and Uganda generally have automatic tax exemptions when somebody qualifies for them, when an investor qualifies for them. Tanzania goes for a system where they have to approve, the minister has to approve them. And of course, there are many other things where there are a lot of similarities, especially between Uganda and Tanzania. Now, the areas where we need to think of going forward in this East African region, the Code of Conduct Against Harmful Tax Competition has not been adopted or implemented. And this was prepared about 10 years ago. This is quite worrying according to that report. And this needs to be actually revisited now, because it is about 10 years. Some of the things may need to be adjusted. So we need this code to be implemented so that there's no harmful competition between the states. There's a need to strengthen the monitoring and reporting on progress.
Hello, James.
Yes, please.
Would you want to clarify what you mean by harmful tax administration? Because the lay person listening out there to you might think that every tax is normal. There is no much problem apart from the fact that we all fear to pay taxes.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, moderator, for thank you, moderator, for that intervention. Yes, taxes can be and incentives can be harmful. For example, a country might say, if you come to our country, we can give you, as an investor, you put in maybe $100,000. We will give you, an exemption, no tax, no corporation tax for 10 years, and so forth. Another country might try to outcompete them within the region and say, for us, we shall give you tax-free exemption of all your things coming in, tax-free holiday for 20 years. Now, investors may tend to go to the next country, which is talking about 20 years. Now, if you are within the same group, you should actually talk together and agree on the same rate so that you don't distort the decisions that are going to be made by investors. That's what I was trying to talk about. Thank you for that. And then, of course, there's a need to strengthen the monitoring and reporting. And you see, even for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, there's now an effort to make sure there is a good system for that, and even for reporting violations of the pacts. That is also done by that is provided for in the African Free Continental Agreement. There's also a need to develop an online platform that tracks tax amendments across the region. And also, for example, the good thing, like now, there's some consultation amongst the East African states, but it's also important that when these amendments are being done, especially for domestic taxes, they should be discussed. At least for customs, they're usually discussed at the East African level, so that we move in the same direction. Maybe the other thing to clarify is that the rates do not really have to become the same, but the principle behind it should be the same. For example, if you say you are taxing somebody's income, what do you include in that income? Yeah, that has to be, the principle behind it has to be the same. For example, it could be saying it is income that you have earned within the country, within this state. That is what is taxed on you, and not each country having a different principle in which they base it on. And of course, around the estimation of cost-benefit analysis, I was trying to say, as we carry out most of this harmonization and so on, a lot of studies have to be done so that we keep within what is beneficial to the countries. Thank you. I've been watching my watch. I did want to overshoot your time, but I'll be happy to take more questions at the end of this.